have here today on the Moms Without Capes podcast, a special guest, Stacey Luces. Welcome to the show, Stacey.
Thank you so much for having me. And as I was telling you earlier, I love the name of this podcast, Moms Without Capes. I can't wait to dig into this with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming. So today's guest, Stacey, is an international speaker, a trainer, master strategist, author, and a certified executive coach who is dedicated to helping other executive women and business owners reduce stress, find joy, and build the life of their dreams by conquering fears of failure and feelings of uncertainty. She's had quite the journey herself, which we'll hear all about in this interview. And today, Stacey and I will be chatting about the challenges of the sandwich generation, those moms who are taking care of both their aging parents and their children. And we'll be discussing some strategies, it's like a tongue twister, to help ease the stress that comes along with all of these responsibilities. But before we dive into that, Stacey, let's go a little bit more into your journey and what brought you to be where you are today.
Yeah. So, you mentioned the sandwich generation. So there are nearly 10 million adults over the age of 40. And most recently, the latter part of their 30s, that in addition to taking care of our young children, managing all of the things that come with a hectic life, right? Building our careers or managing our businesses. But we're also coming up on the other end of that spectrum where we are also bearing the responsibility of taking care of our aging and in many cases, ailing parents. And so there you get that sort of sense of the crush and all of the responsibilities that come along with that. In my case, definitely. So I'm in my 40s. I won't say how far along in there.
It's okay. We celebrate age.
Right? I'm telling you. But definitely, we can all agree caregiving is important and necessary. And women, I feel like for centuries have been bearing sort of the lion's share of that. And often being overlooked in the workforce in terms of the amount of time that takes away from us. For me in particular, having a high-powered career, I didn't have my kids until I was in my early 30s. And so I was also running a business and having to take care of my parents, totally felt overwhelmed, stressed, and just not myself. And that had been going on for quite a number of years. And I was definitely wearing the Superwoman cape. So that's why this podcast resonates with me, right? And so a couple of years ago, take you back a little bit. I lived in Maryland at the time. It's about 7 a.m. I'm in the urgent care with my sister, Amy. And it's bad when the urgent care calls an ambulance for you to take you to the emergency room. And so in my case, long story short, I was rushed into emergency surgery where I flatlined twice. So I like to say essentially died and came back to life. And I know for sure that I ended up there because I was stressed, overwhelmed, dealing with, all of the challenges financially, emotionally, time management wise, feeling like my to-do list was a mile long every morning. Putting everyone else above my needs. And in my cases, it almost took the ultimate toll. And so I realized, if I didn't do something drastic, I wouldn't live long enough to really see my kids, who at the time were 3 years old and 18 months, grow up. And so it was a huge wake-up call for me. I had ignored all the warning signs. And you asked me about some of the positives that came out of that. Well, it took a few years for me to really regain full kind of physical and emotional control over what had happened. And I really began to search for things that could help me rebuild, not only I shouldn't say rebuild, but almost recreate what I wanted my life to look like. It entailed a move from DC, where we had lived for about 20 years, to Florida, so I could enjoy kind of where I lived and not wait till I retired. People thought we were crazy. I launched a business on the side that I was passionate about. I totally lost a bunch of weight that I had been, yo-yoing over for quite a number of years. But the best part was I really actively worked with coaches and sort of invested in myself for the first time. And so regained a lot of peace of mind, a lot of clarity around what I wanted to do with my future, and created boundaries, which, you know, us in Superwoman capes don't have any boundaries.
Don't have any.
It's
No
like,
boundaries.
who's next and who I need to help fix,
Yes.
do something for. And really my journey inspired me to become a coach for women like myself. I found that there weren't many people focused on the sandwich generation. I felt left out. You know, here I was, a mom with young kids. Here I was dealing with aging parents, and I had no sort of understanding of truly what that entailed. And I was also at a point where my career had fully exploded, and dealing with not only a sense of, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to handle all of this? But in some cases, holding myself back because I didn't know if I went full throttle, if I would be able to balance all of these things. And so that led to a lot of people pleasing, right? Critical self-talk. I mean, you name it, I was there. And so really the positives were me getting, you know, clarity, confidence, and certainty about who I was and what I wanted to do, but also having the courage to put that cape down.
That's huge. That's huge.
To rest it.
We
and
become
to
comfortable in that.
Exactly. But also it's almost like a badge of honor. When we talk about how busy we are and how much we have to do. So me taking a step back, and I also stepped down from a fairly senior position at the time. And I have no shame in the game. I took a huge pay cut in order to start building the life that I really wanted. And I would say within a few years, I was able to bounce back exponentially from what I call a setback. And I had a mentor once, Carla. She was with the Air Force, and she said the best analogy for me. She said, Stacey, sometimes just like a slingshot, you got to go a little bit backwards.
Pull back. That's true.
To gain that momentum to fling forward. And I always keep that visual in my head when I'm struggling with my ego taking control of a decision. What are people going to say? You know, oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. I really think about that analogy. And I mean, we talked about that almost 15 years ago, but it really stayed with me that sometimes to pull forward, to hugely pull forward, you got to go back.
Pull back. I love that analogy. That's great.
Right?
It's real visual. It's
and it's so elementary, but it's so powerful, right?
Yeah, that you've got to take that step back, or you've got to expect to be pulled back in order to propel yourself forward into where you were meant to be. And it's almost like that medical emergency, you know, being flatlined, like the landing on yourself on your back was like really that wake up call that, you know, and allowed you to pick out what you wanted to keep from your pre-life, and to be able to create the life that you want to be living. Because
I love the word pre-life. And I feel like I've told this story many times, and I've yet to meet someone that had a near-death experience. So I often challenge people to say, you know, I got a second chance. Are you sure you're going to get one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You got to kind of make the most of it and pull back to spring forward. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And really create that line yourself. Like, okay, now this is like, what is it the saying? Like someday or
yes.
I can't even think of
always
waiting. Day one or one day. Yeah.
The book I hated the most in high school was Waiting for Godot. I don't know how many of you remember that book. I hated that book.
I did not read that book.
What is the point of this book? Why are we waiting? It's so repetitive, but really when I meet with new clients and I ask, how long have you been thinking about whatever problem they're struggling with? And they're like, oh, you know, 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, oh, so if we meet in a year from now or 2 years from now, do you think you would have solved it? And you get that kind of shock look, because time is moving, whether we're adapting, changing or not, it's moving.
Sure. Yeah. So let's dive into the sandwich generation. Tell us a little bit more about that and where you find yourself in there, and like, what are you finding are the biggest challenges?
Yeah, you know, I'm a data girl, right? My past life. So I've worked in big corporate, worked for IBM, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. Most recently, I worked for the Department of Homeland Security for 15 years. I quit that job in December. Thought again I was crazy, but I really set up a runway to do that, and walked away from a federal career, a six-figure job that was giving me stability, but there were things I wanted to do, and I had to make that call. I do believe that it's important for us when we talk about the Sanders generation to really quantify what's happening, right? And from a health perspective, I'm not the only one. An estimated 66% of women that are in caregiving roles, they're female, average age is 49. We're providing 20 hours a week or more of unpaid care to whether that's kids or parents. And the value of that informal care, right? Hold on to your Superwoman capes, is between 148 to 188 billion dollars annually. That's billion, right?
Yeah.
The cost of caregiving on our individual female caregiver, in terms of lost wages and Social Security benefits, is about $324,000. And that's because about a third of us are passing up on a promotion or a training assignment that may take us to travel or have inconsistent hours. 22% of us, so almost a quarter of us, have taken leaves of absence for different reasons. Also, a lot of us now, and we're noticing this great resignation or whatever, but about 20% of us are switching or have switched at some point from full-time to part-time work. And so in terms of the overall financial impact on our future and what we're trying to do, it certainly has a compelling, a little bit of a rub there. From a health perspective, I talk about myself. I'm not the only one, right? 1 in 5 caretakers between the ages of 18 and 39, so that's even on the younger end of the spectrum, say that stress is always present.
Right.
And in my case, it was always.
I'm surprised it stopped at 39.
Yeah. I mean, I think the data, right? It probably gets worse.
Yeah.
And so there's a negative impact not only on that, but socially, we are also more isolated because we're foregoing any time for hanging out with our friends. Right. We're sort of running home to do all the things. Greater increases in depression, less personal mastery because we really don't have the time to do things outside of like normal crunch time.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of health problems ranging from not only anxiety and depression, but we're more at risk for high blood pressure, more at risk for sort of, I call them that triad of your cholesterol's high because you're probably eating not the way you're supposed to.
Right. On the go.
Right. Probably running a few pounds or dozen pounds overweight. And that has added implications on our heart and body. And honestly, this was not a bit of a surprise. I grew up in Gen X. You came home and you fended for yourself, right? Like a lot of us grew up like savages. Like we grew up on our own, right? And I think now we're seeing this post-pandemic impact to our children, where they are suffering from anxiety, social awkwardness, like a lot of unwillingness to engage in extracurricular activities. And so because we are so busy, we actually are parenting less because they're on social media, they're on their electronics.
Right.
So they're self-sufficient to a point. They're self-sufficient to the point of being maybe too independent, but also not having the coping mechanisms or strategies to really have true connection, have an understanding that, hey, this dopamine hit isn't going to last. How do I self-soothe, self-manage, ask for help? And even though we're connected, I feel like we are less connected than ever. So it really has a lot of implications, from finance to wealth to parenting to navigating elder care. It's a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah, no, it is a lot. I mean, I've never thought about it as much as what you just laid out, and how all of this caretaking is taking a toll, not only on us,
Yeah.
but it definitely has that ripple effect and
Yeah.
is affecting, all of the generations. I'm reading a book now and it's called
Mm.
Screaming on the Inside. And
Oh,
it's
I've
all
heard
about,
about that. You're the
it's
second person.
really
I'm writing it
good.
down.
I'm doing it audible. Actually almost done,
Yeah.
but it was all of it. And since you're a numbers person, the stats,
Yes.
it was very stat heavy, especially in the beginning of it, but it talks all about American motherhood and it takes you through like the pandemic. So it's like a newer book and just the effect of like how it has changed through like it goes from like colonial America to like now, and like the effect like just on like from culture and like the society's like interpretation of motherhood, how mothers have changed, how parenting has changed. Like it's very interesting. I recommend it. But just
I
what you
love
were
it.
just sharing, it was weaved in and out of that book, just about the stress, the increased stress we're feeling and everything. Like there was a lot that you just said.
And one could argue that, oh, how come I've never heard of this sandwich generation? Why is that coming up now? And if we look back to your point about how we've changed through the decades or so, 50 years ago, our parents were having us at age 20,
Right.
25. So they were young parents and their parents were probably in their 40s. So our age.
Yeah.
Now we've waited till we're in our 30s and 40s sometimes to have children.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with elementary school, middle school in our 40s and 50s sometimes. And our parents are now.
To your point, time marches on. And so.
And a lot of them didn't plan for what's happening, living longer, but having comorbidities, maybe high blood pressure, diabetes, and another thing. And healthcare is more expensive. And so you've got this really brutal, complex thing that's happening where more and more of us, even millennials, are being pushed into the sandwich generation. And we're kind of like, oh no, what's happening? Without the true ability to really manage it properly. And we're also not asking for help because we're like, I should be able to bootstrap this.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're finding that that's not working. That's not working because it's landing like it did you right on your back in the hospital.
Yeah.
So with all of these challenges that the sandwich generation faces, what are some strategies that you would recommend or that you find have been helpful in order to limit these challenges or to overcome them?
I will tell you that many of us, Gen X, Gen Y, even, we really are self-sufficient to a fault.
Yeah, so, we do not like to ask for help.
Oh yeah, we will try to do it ourselves. I'm gonna read a book. I'm gonna
Google it. We will Google it.
I'm gonna figure this out on my own. And for many, many years, in my case, I was trying to not only achieve my highest personal and professional goals, but do these things myself. And, I had a lot of reasons why, right? Maybe later when the kids grow up, because I had, I've got to worry about college and I've got to worry about retirement and all of these things. I don't have time to invest in myself to figure this out. The other, I want to say myth we tell ourselves is I don't have time. Well, you're going to have a lot of time if you end up in a hospital bed. Right. With something bigger going on. Everybody needs me. Right. And so if you can look at yourself in the mirror and really admit that you're tired of feeling tired, or in many cases, people say I don't have a partner. Maybe true love does exist, or great friendships do exist, or having a life outside of work does exist. It's not a priority for you.
Right.
And then all of these excuses really tumble into, okay, how do I find help? For me, it entailed a lot of really hard reflection and self-discovery. And I went the gamut from, a life coach to an executive coach to a business coach. And really my program is a blend of all of these because I find that I couldn't do one without the other, given my circumstances and the challenges I was feeling. It wasn't just a career thing. It wasn't just a life thing. It wasn't a weight thing. it was all of these complexities that I just needed a holistic way to approach this. I would say that if you are in this crunch, you know, best thing to do is, you know, we always hear the term, oh, improve your work-life balance. So hard to do. I think the first thing is, what are your boundaries? You know, we laughed and we said we don't have any.
Right.
I think that if you are coming to the table with an empty cup, you know, pretending you're Jesus and, you know, let's just create wine from, from water, that's hard. And so understanding what your values are, sticking to what those core values are, and then if things and requests and demands don't match up to those, then it's okay to say no.
Right.
And it's okay to say no to your kids. It's okay to say no to your boss.
Right.
But figure out where the boundary lines are for you and maybe communicate those. An example, I say this and it's like a common example, but it resonates with so many women. If you needed to use the bathroom at, say you have 7 Zoom meetings, and at Zoom meeting number 2, you had to go to the bathroom, and it's Zoom meeting number 6, you still haven't gone.
Yeah.
That's like
That's
massive.
a problem.
Massive. Also not impacting yourself. If you've been thirsty since 9 a.m. and it's like 2 p.m. and you're like, oh my God, I should have, like, I have my water right here.
Right.
My goal is 3 of these a day. I don't always succeed, but they're right in front of my face.
Mm-hmm.
So a way to kind of do this is a priority for me is to remain hydrated. And it's a simple thing.
Right. Right.
So how am I equipping myself to do that? Well, every morning I fill 3 of these bottles and they're right in my face. They're like, hi, Stacey. Right? So have boundaries, but also have integrity with yourself.
Right.
And I think that investing in your relationships is important. Like, what networks are you a part of? I'm a part of some sandwich generation Facebook groups. You know, I've got a middle schooler and a high schooler. I want mamas that are not only 10, 20 years older than me, decades older than me, but I want people that are in the suck of it in
the season. Yeah.
But also I want to mentor and be able to help people that have maybe newborns, right? I met a cousin of mine in Canada recently. She's got I think he's 8 or 9 months. And we totally had a long chat about, you know, what I did and what you don't worry about this. And it felt really great to sort of pass those on.
You had to be the mentor.
Yeah. And so create support systems for the things that are priorities in your life, because you don't have to necessarily go it alone. And then I would say, prioritize yourself. One of the things I ask people to do, and you know, it's quite transformative. And I started asking my clients to, on the first week that we met, if they were in my coaching program, to take guardianship over themselves.
And what do you mean by that?
I mean that many of us, the majority of us, will take better care of anybody else over ourselves.
Right. Okay.
And so by assuming that guardianship over yourself, when you think about what a guardian is somebody that is in charge of you, responsible for you, has your best interest at heart. And by almost having that ownership of yourself and protection over yourself, you're forced almost to pay more attention.
Right. That's true. That's very true.
Right. And so I also say journal a little bit about what you observed in your day. Actively be present with the decisions that you're making, and these tiny little things that you are neglecting, they add up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a lot of moms need permission in order to take that guardianship of themselves, because they feel an exercise that I do with my clients is we redefine what it means to be a good mom. We talk about that because so often we think that a good mom is somebody who sacrifices themselves for their family or for their kids, and they put themselves like in the background of their life or on the back burner, whatever saying you want to say. But like we feel like we're not allowed as mothers to prioritize ourselves
100%.
and we hold ourselves back because of it. And we feel like we're going to be a bad mom if we do prioritize ourselves, if we do take guardianship of ourselves.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, as you and I both know, we're 100% responsible for our own lives. Like there's nobody who's going to be more responsible for our lives than us. And so
Yeah.
it is vital that we take that guardianship.
For sure. For sure.
So tell me, Stacey, what do you do for fun?
For
I love
fun.
asking this question because I feel like so many women, like they, again, that permission piece, they hold themselves back from having fun. They can't be the fun.
So I'm from a tiny island in the Caribbean originally. And I really like music and I like to dance. And for a long time, I wasn't. Decades. Who has time?
Yeah.
And so really incorporating dancing back, and it's not great dancing, you guys. Don't think I'm like epically gonna like
Pro.
fly for Dancing with the Stars or anything. It's like messy, sloppy, like comedian style, like moving awkwardly, right?
Mm.
But the joy that brings me, and I found ways to like incorporate that into a couple of things. So one, and I guess I'm saying this on purpose, you don't have to have a fun thing that you do alone.
Right.
So for me, Saturday morning at the Luces household is we do chores. Like Saturday morning is not really enjoyed here. Right? It's like laundry and mopping and like bathroom. It is real life.
Right.
But everybody gets to pick a couple songs. And let me tell you, some of those YouTube songs that they listen to, I just want to like peel my eyeballs off. But everybody picks a couple songs and we all are dancing and cleaning. Even the dog gets involved. I also really like Zumba.
Yeah.
So any way that I can incorporate music and rhythm and movement for me is fun. I'm pretty boring. I love to go on the beach and like laze out and like just read. I don't want anybody talking to me. I don't want to like entertain anyone. So I'm at the point in my career where I can design my workday. And so Fridays are open days. I do whatever I want on a Friday. So for me, many Fridays you will find me. I drop the kids off to school. I go to the beach.
It sounds like the life.
I'm
From being in
telling you,
Montana, as I said, I take a solocation down there.
I'm telling you,
like,
it's
but I only
not
get 1
even
week. The fact that you get this like all year is like
all year.
oh, you're living the-
And
I
some,
just
let me
live
tell you,
vicariously.
some Fridays are foot on the gas because I've got work to do, clients, a big deliverable, I'm traveling. So it's not always, but those are my days to have fun. And a lot of times I may be reading client, proposals or whatever, but it is in my happy place. I've got the sun beating on me. I've got the wind in my hair. That's the whole reason after I died and came back. I was like, I'm going to live exactly the way I want to live because I don't want to be retired. Nothing wrong with retirement, but that was like 2040.
Right.
Like
a long time in the future. Yeah. Right.
I want to do it now. And so when I go and I'm laying there in my 40s doing whatever I want to do and I look around, everybody is probably 20 or 30 years older than me. So there's a secret sense of, oh, I'm doing the, but
living.
I always see you can design your life the way you want it. We just somewhere along the way we thought we had to like not do that.
These rules. Yeah.
It's
funny that you mentioned Zumba because that was part of my journey to taking off my supermom cape. My friend had kept inviting me to a Zumba class and I thought I was making all those excuses, the same ones you mentioned, right? Like the world was going to fall apart. They couldn't do like, they couldn't survive for like that hour that I went. My house had to be perfect. The meals had to be cooked. Like I continued to put her off until finally one night I felt like all the stars lined up and I went to the class and it was such fun. Like the girl energy, like it was just amazing, like moving my body. Like it was enough reinforcement that the next day I didn't have to have things so perfectly. Like I still like worried. I still felt very guilty, but I did it again and continued to do it till I got to the point where I became an instructor. And that was really
that's amazing.
My whole journey. Like, what the heck am I doing? Like I was holding on to my supermom cape so tight, homeschooling all my kids. We had moved across the country. Like there was so many things that I was doing because I felt like this guilt and I felt like I had to sacrifice everything and I was not able to prioritize myself. So when you mentioned Zumba, I was like, I love it because that was what really kicked me off. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like something has to change because I found that I loved dancing and it was something that I wasn't giving myself
We have that in
permission
common.
to do. So.
And the funny thing is you talk about, we design a hard life.
We do. We think that that's what we need to do in order to be like the parents or good parents.
That's the catch-22. It's like, oh, I have this exist. And it's like, well, yeah, but these were our decisions. All of us.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here like in a beach chair, like, because every day it's a decision to do what I love to do. Yes, it's hard, but also I know that I've put these checks and balances in place that keeps me out of like hospital bed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So do you have a book that you can recommend to our listeners?
Oh my God. So this was such a hard question. And we talked about this a little bit. So I feel like, and this is just my belief, right? My experience is that sometimes we have to go through a really horrible thing to awaken to a different way of living. And in my case, we've heard about my story. I'm sure everybody has their version of that or knows somebody that has this version of a hard life-altering moment when they had to make changes and give up, in essence, your old self or your old patterns, whatever. And for me, a book that really I got in my early 20s, but it didn't have the impact on me that it needed to have was by Rumi, R-U-M-I. He's a poet. He's a Persian poet and sort of a Sufi mystic. And it's a collection of short poems, very lyrical. They talk about life, marriage, love, death. And I feel like when I read it, it gave me different perspectives and different insights. And I think that the power in that, as is your podcast or podcasts people listen to, or music they listen to, or a painting, is to have inspiration. And that inspiration can be fun. It can be debilitating. It can be, whatever it is. But for me, that book really inspired me to think about things differently, specifically love, which is my highest core value, and how I was approaching love. I'll give you a perfect example. How I was approaching love was because I grew up in a third world country. The way that I would love my family was to provide for them to the best of my ability. So I would work the hardest I could work, become the most successful, get a big fat paycheck, and take care of them, because that was how I would show them my love.
Right.
Subconsciously. It's not like I'm walking around with this.
Right. I know. It's not, you did not.
Right.
And you then doing it.
What the actual result was of me being overworked, tired, traveling all over the country, never really present, always on my computer. It got to the point where one Christmas they bought ornaments. We bought ornaments for each other as a family. My husband got a motorcycle and I got a laptop ornament.
You got a laptop what?
Ornament, Christmas ornament. Gosh. I was like, oh my God, like they think all I do is work.
Yeah.
And so for me, my core value was still love, but I had to do it differently. I had to put that first and then make decisions from that.
Yeah.
And we talked about the slingshot. It entailed me taking a position that was a demotion, a pay cut.
Right. In order to improve your quality of life.
Yes. But springing forward. So none of these changes in my life weren't without its own sacrifice and inspiration and different perspective. But some of those poems at that point really encouraged me to just keep going with it, keep following my intuition. And there's my favorite quote. It said, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself.
Oh, I like that quote. Who said that? Do you know who said that?
Rumi. It's from
okay. Yep. It's from that. Okay. Yeah, I really like that. So where can listeners find you, Stacey?
Sure. So I'm sure you're going to post this with everything, but they can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Stacey Luces, or my website is Evolution Executive Coaching. And from there, Instagram, everything kind of the same.
Okay, perfect. I will put all of Stacey's links in today's episode, in the show notes of today's episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us your wisdom.
And one thing for listeners, so I've done this quite a few times and it's always met with great results. On my website, there is a complimentary needs assessment. If you are wondering, am I in the sandwich generation? Do I need help? Am I where I need to be? It's a free assessment that really gives you a quick gauge and asks you some really significant questions about where you are and more importantly, where you want to be. And then, so if you feel so compelled, I also offer a free complimentary clarity session where you come out with a couple of actions after about 45 minutes of us chatting that jumpstarts you on your way to a little bit more freedom.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So definitely reach out, check out her website, check out that needs assessment. That all sounds so amazing. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.